Time to talk about the Isak situation. I'll put it off as long as possible because honestly, these situations, I don't know if they're my least favorite to talk about, but I think the most important thing to stress when you're dealing with a transfer saga around a player and a club that is swirled as long as this has and will probably continue to swirl for as long as it can, there are very few facts to work with. Very few. There's a lot of conjecture, a lot of rumor, but there are very few actually factual things that happen that you can, check a little box and be like, yes, got that, nailed it. Okay, we know 100% that is what happened. It just doesn't happen with these sorts of situations. There's too many people involved, right? Everybody at the club, the manager, the fellow players. You've got, the players' camp, which, can be sometimes, Lamine Yamal's dad, Erling Haaland, Kylian Mbappe's mom, right? Like all these people that can get involved publicly, whatever the player is saying or doing, they're removing somebody's tag from Instagram or, whatever. And then agents, right? Which they're trying to do whatever they can to get the most money for themselves and their client in whatever particular order that happens to happen in. But I can try and give you at least like a public perception timeline and my opinions on it. That's why we're here. Alexander Isak, about 10 days ago, this hit Reddit, was the first place that I saw it. The contract negotiations might not be going fantastic, right? I mean, obviously, he's under contract for, I think it's 3 more years. I think he's got 3 years left in his contract with Newcastle, and Newcastle has as much money as they can possibly spend under FFP because they're owned by Saudi Arabia, which, look, if you thought Manchester City and PSG were oil clubs, you better be glad Saudi Arabia didn't buy a club before FFP because they are worth more than 10 times the countries that own those teams, right? They're in a whole other league, right? It's not even a competition. It's not even a conversation. They are the Mac Daddy. They're the Death Star. Right, so every single dollar that they can spend under FFP, they're going to spend, and they're not even going to notice it, which means they also don't need to sell anybody. They don't. The only reason to sell somebody is for FFP expanding reasons at Newcastle. There is no other reason. There's no other outside investment they wouldn't be able to do. Nothing else. If they sell a player, it is a calculated decision that they're going to be able to use what they get from that player sale to go into the FFP and make a better team. And what Saudi Arabia has very clearly decided at Newcastle, right? The people that they put in charge to run Newcastle have very clearly decided Alexander Isak is very important to the team. If you don't know who Isak is, he's the Swedish striker. He is big, he is technical, he is lethal, he is confident. He is everything that you want out of a striker, and he is now, little salt and pepper on top, been seasoned in the world's best league for a couple of years as a lead man, and he has just gotten better in that role. He's done everything he can possibly do to prove himself to the very few clubs at the absolute top of the game. Any one of those clubs would be happy to have Alexander Isak. Virtually any one of them. He's that type of guy. He is the cut below Erling Haaland. Erling Haaland being the freak, I'm going to score more goals than matches played type striker. Alexander Isak, you can totally win the Champions League with him playing the striker position on your team. I have no doubt about that in my mind. And Newcastle knows that, which is why they've repeatedly said that he's not for sale. But in some sort of renegotiation for his contract, it's clear that Alexander Isak, coming into the prime of his career, wants more money, right? And that brings us back to this headline. I want £300,000 a week to sign a new contract at Newcastle. He is, of course, still under contract for a couple of years, but he has basically shown up and said, look, at the age of 25, I'm worth more than what you're paying me. And Newcastle clearly ended up in the trenches trying to battle this. The Athletic a couple days ago released this article. It's a great one. His desire to leave Newcastle United, how we got here and what happens now. They highlight that the only things we really know at this point are that he rejected a contract offer and that he is not on the Newcastle East Asia tour, right? Because Newcastle's on a preseason tour trying to build up their street cred or whatever. Liverpool, this hit today, 12:23 p.m. It is 5:55 p.m. August 1st at the time that I'm recording this. They put an offer in. Liverpool did. That's the team everybody had been Thinking about Liverpool was applying pressure to try and get Isak, right? Liverpool just won the Premier League. They're thinking that, hey, maybe, if we go out and get this guy that's a cut below Erling Haaland, we're going to be an even better team than we already are. That's a fair assessment. Liverpool has also shown that they seem to have tripped and fallen and discovered the fact that they are a Premier League team that is the best Premier League team right now, and they can spend like it. They can spend like one of those biggest clubs in the world. They can spend, if Chelsea can spend like this, then fucking Liverpool can spend like this, right? They're finding that out. 110 million pounds rejected. This is David Ornstein, right? This is not some tabloid report. This means that there has been an official tendered offer now, which is why I'm kind of making this video now, for Isak. That is a massive escalation. This is also a ton of money. 110 million pounds is a massive offer. Newcastle pre-Saudi Arabia would have taken this. They would have tripped and fallen sprinting to the desk to accept this offer. But Saudi Arabia only needs to sell for one thing. What is it, class? FFP. That's the only reason they would need to sell somebody, and they are not, it seems, in the business, probably smartly, of letting one of the best strikers in the world walk straight off their team, straight into a rival team. I don't blame Isak for looking for it. Newcastle's project, it's still a bit too far away for somebody who's 25 years old and is starting to reach the peak of their powers, right? Physically, you can do everything that you want to do. Mentally, he's been seasoned for a couple of years, like I said, in this league. He's ready. He's ready to walk into a team like Liverpool and score 25 goals next season. Fully capable of that, probably would do it. Liverpool knows that. Newcastle knows that. The issue for Newcastle is under FFP, it just takes a while to build up the base of a club that can consistently get top four. It just takes a while. I mean, you can't just break the bank one season and be there. If you could, Newcastle would have already won the Prem. No doubt in my mind. They have so much money. If FFP didn't exist, they would be sitting there with like Erling Haaland, Kylian Mbappe, right? Like they would be sitting there with all the guys that they would need to win anything they wanted to win, because they have the checkbook of the Saudi league in the best league in the world. So you don't have to go play in Narnia to go get a Saudi paycheck. You could just go play for Newcastle, right? Those types of offers that were coming in for all those players would be coming from Newcastle. But under FFP, with the constraints that exist, it's going to take them a while to get there. I don't blame Isak for looking at this situation saying, well, I've got 3 years left on my contract. I feel like I'm not getting paid fairly now, right? And he's probably not. If he's not making 300,000 pounds a week at his skill level, at the level Newcastle is at, he is underpaid. He looks at that situation and goes, I'm going to lose out on 3 more earning years if I try and wait this out to the end of my contract. Maybe, I start talking to Newcastle, and if they're not serious about paying me a ton of money, if that's what he's interested in, and that kind of sounds like what he's interested in here, then maybe I look at an opportunity to move somewhere. Because playing at Newcastle, I mean, they've got a snowball's chance in hell of winning the Premier League, but they're not going to be one of the few 1 or 2 or 3 favorites for the league for the next couple of years. They're getting better. But I mean, Newcastle, with the resources and the ambition they have, they want to be a top 4 team every year. They want to be competing for league titles. And under FFP, unless you have a fluke season where you happen to bring in a couple of guys that end up being great players that nobody else knows are great players, a la Leicester, right? You're not going to be able to close that gap quickly. Liverpool's going to be competing for the league title every year. With the players they have around there right now, the next couple of years, they're going to be competing for a league title. They're going to be competing for a Champions League title. They're going to be competing for an FA Cup. Right? Newcastle's going to be lucky to get one like they did. So I get Isak's thought process. I understand why some of the fans are upset, right? Isak's a pure rat that he wants to leave. But look, it's the same thing with relationships, right? There's only 2 ways a relationship ends. You get married or you break up. That's it. Right? And if you have a player on your team, there's like 3 ways it ends. Their contract runs out and they leave. They get transferred or they retire. One of those 3 things is going to happen. And when Alexander Isak signed for Newcastle, I don't think anybody was like, he's going to retire at Newcastle. Right? And the other 2 options generally leave the fans feeling frustrated. Isak has given very good years to Newcastle. Remember, I already said that I understand the fans feeling a little jaded that maybe he wants to leave now. as the project is a little bit more advanced and especially going to a league rival. But I can't bring myself all the way to the point where I can fault Isak. There are a couple other things that popped up that I wanted to point out. While Newcastle rejects this offer, continues to insist he's not for sale, they have started to float moves. They've insisted that they need a couple of strikers if he's going to leave, even though, again, they're saying he's not for sale. And they have put a target on Benjamin Šeško. They're not the only one. Manchester United's also sniffing around Šeško, who's been, a star Red Bull product. He's somebody that on Football Manager they've known about for years. He is much the same as Alexander Isak was a few years ago. He is tall, he is technical, he is lethal, he is confident, but he doesn't have the seasoning, right? He hasn't proven necessarily, even though he's been playing in Germany, that he can deliver consistently at the highest level of the game, but he has shown all of the reasons to believe that he might be able to do that, which would be the reason that you would spend 70 million pounds on Šeško and more than 110 million pounds on Isak. What do I think is going to happen? He's going to leave. At the end of the day, if a player doesn't want to play at a club, it's pretty easy for them to force their way out. He can show up, he can go through the motions, but it'll be a sour situation for everybody involved. Everything he does on the field is going to be extra scrutinized. Every time he doesn't press, every time he does this or that, it's going to be extra scrutinized. And then eventually Newcastle's going to take the money because Liverpool has the money to burn. They have the money to burn without putting themselves in a tough financial situation. And they want a striker. And when you're Liverpool, the better your club is, the fewer options there are to improve your team. And Alexander Isak improves their team. They will wait. It will happen late in the window. But I think he's going to move. The only alternative is Newcastle moves enough money around that they're able to offer a truly mega contract to Isak where he feels like he is compensated at the world-class level, the way that he really deserves to be. But this soap opera is just getting started with the reports today that massive money has been rejected by Newcastle. The die is cast, right? And we're just going to see where everything lands.